All right, so it's a beautiful but windy day here at Wilder Ranch, just north of Santa Cruz. I'm here with Amy and Maura. So we just got our composition sort of figured out. Let me show you what I'm thinking. I am thinking of doing something like this here. I like the shadow portion of this segment of cliffs here and the light right on the front. And then the interesting whitewater pattern in the ocean. Also how the cliffs sort of go off into the distance. So I'll be able to use atmospheric perspective on some of these distant cliffs. And by that I mean just lightening them up and cooling them off to push them back.
This is my first time using oil paints.
Yeah, first time using oil paints, right. And so you toned with like blue color? Actually. So did you use what, a cerulean?
Yeah.
All right, nice.
And white, and white.
Maura, what size are you working on today?
This is 8x8.
Oh, an 8x8, okay.
Yeah, and I tried something a little different. Normally I tone it with sort of a burnt sienna. And sometimes I find that just a little too bright.
Right.
So I did that, but then I went over it with just a little bit of raw umber and white combined, so it's just a little bit more muted. So let's see. Yeah,
looks good. And then you're sketching with burnt sienna?
Transparent red oxide.
All right, so as usual, I have the Anderson easel here, and I'm painting on a 16 by 20 inch panel today. Okay, so here is the basic composition, and I've sort of moved some of the elements around. I'm just looking for big shapes, and then I can get more specific. So in other words, like the distant cliffs, then these secondary cliffs, and then the ones that are right up close, and then obviously like kind of rocks sticking out into the water. But once those big shapes are in place, then I can kind of, you know, fine tune or be more specific. Swinging a big brush. Is that your brush, or did Maura give that to you?
This is a brush. I just grabbed some random brushes.
That's pretty decent size.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, to get the water in. Kind of. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm having fun.
You're having fun.
Yes.
That's exactly it. All right, Maura. So it looks like you laid in your shadows first. Your shadow shapes.
Yeah, lightly. And you know, I'm thinking about this shape right here. Should I make this all the way out so that I have two shapes, or just kind of, you know, chop that like that so that this is one shape? Right now I'm thinking one shape.
I was wrestling with the same thing, and I ended up shortening this. I don't want to cut off,
right, like
to say the bottom portion of the composition from the top. So I'm kind of doing the same thing.
Right.
So I'm starting with my darks, and I mixed up a couple different darks. This is a mixture that is sort of new for me, and it's dioxazine purple with yellow ochre. And in the middle here is my usual dark mixture, or one of my usuals. This one is ultramarine with burnt sienna. I might also mix up another pile that has ultramarine with alizarin crimson. But for now, I think I'm gonna go with this mixture right here. And even though this looks light on the palette, it's only because it's in full sunlight. Once it's up here, look how dark that actually is. But I like that it's sort of a, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you know, there's a bit of purple in there, and, you know, there's some warmth from the yellow ochre. So, but it's basically like a gray that kind of leans towards purple. And I do my best to keep the paint application spontaneous so that I can have energy in the brush strokes. So now I'm looking at this edge of this shadow right here, and I'm squinting at the subject to simplify the shape. And there's a shadow on the beach that's going to be disappearing soon, so I want to kind of lay in that shape. Actually, the shadow won't disappear, it's just going to actually take over the whole beach. Okay, so for the sky I'm using titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a bit of phthalo blue. All right, I'm mixing a color for the water, and I'm using ultramarine, phthalo blue, a bit of cadmium yellow medium, and titanium white. And I want to make sure that the value of the water is dark enough that it'll make the white water pop. So I put a bit of titanium white here just so I can judge the value. And I'll be looking for sort of delicate shifts in, you know, temperature and value within the water. But for now, I just want to get an interesting pattern, and I'm sort of keeping the mix thin at this point. All right, so for the shadow portion of the cliff, I'm using titanium white, yellow ochre, and dioxazine purple. All right, I'm adding a little more yellow ochre for the warmer part of the cliffs, and I am just approximating colors at this point, and I'll be fine-tuning, obviously. Okay, so Maura's got it pretty much blocked in, huh? Love those shapes. You're already starting to put some of the, like, those little vertical strokes defining the rocks.
Yeah, and the shadows. I tend to not go dark enough soon enough, so I try and remind myself to do that.
To just establish those darks first?
That's right, because it's always compared to what? If you don't have that dark in, then you don't know how dark that's supposed to go.
The darkest darks obviously are in the rocks, and then the lightest light is the white water.
Right.
And I find like most of the time I'm just sort of keying the whole thing to the white water, you know?
Yeah, which is why I put in some of the whites here, just again, compared to what?
Oh yeah, like having them right in here. Exactly,
right.
So you have some comparison.
I feel as though they're an end of painting detail, but I also feel like I need to get some in now.
Exactly.
Just a couple just to see.
To be able to adjust, or to be able to judge the other values.
Exactly.
That's right. All right, how you doing over here?
I'm okay. I'm not liking, I'm trying to add shadow, and that did not make me happy, so I need to fix
the shadows
that.
right here?
Yeah, like she said to do.
Actually, I mean, I like the color of that. Did you mix some purple in there, so you're getting a light effect right there? And yeah, so
Just need to flesh it out in a way that looks better.
yeah, I can tell you're having fun though.
I am, and I'm looking forward to doing the flowers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yellow flower ideas here.
Oh, these flowers in the foreground? Okay, yeah, looking good. So the composition is basically blocked in here, and now, I mean, I still have to do, you know, the beach area, but I kind of left the areas that are in light unpainted. And now I can, as I mentioned, I can just become more, like, get a little more specific. I'm gonna have more contrast in the foreground, obviously, and then as we go off into the distance, progressively less contrast, and also cooler colors using atmospheric perspective to create some depth.
I gotta try that.
I like that you are not afraid to load on the thick paint. That's probably because it was my tube of titanium white.
Well, when I started, I was just the opposite, and somebody told me you got to be, and so then I overcorrected, and now I just.
No, it's good. I think it's fun, you know, applying thick paint. Oh, and yeah, and you did got some nice saturation on your flowers there too. She can't stop. She's having too much fun.
Stop, won't stop.
Okay, I'm done. That's it.
So you darkened this portion a little bit to get that.
Just a little bit. I actually put some blue right there, maybe a little more purple there.
Right. So not only do you have like a value shift to create light right here, but you have a temperature shift as well.
Right. Yeah. And then I also lightened that up some more too.
Yeah. And I love this. This came out really nice right here. This sort of section. Yeah,
I like that rock.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Fewer seals on it this time, but
yeah. Well, oh, were they were all out here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now they've shifted over into the cove.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I finished up with, and as I mentioned, I was attempting to create a sense of depth using atmospheric perspective. So, you know, these cliffs in the foreground have more contrast and more saturation than the ones in the distance. The ones in the distance, less contrast and less saturation, cooler colors. And so there's also a sense of depth that's created because of the scale of the different, you know, cliffs here or headlands. You know, this one in the foreground, obviously much bigger, and these, they get progressively smaller as they go into the distance. I didn't include a lot of the finishing process, which you guys have seen before. You know, after I do the scrub in, where I scrub in approximate colors and values, keeping that paint thin, the scrub in is thin, and then I come on top of it with short loaded strokes to build up the rest of the painting. But I spent so much time on this area right here because I wanted to have color in the shadows. I wanted luminous shadows, especially right here in the foreground. As I mentioned, I wanted more saturation. And this is just such a tricky balance right here because, you know, I want it to be dark enough that I have contrast or a strong value shift with the light, you know, edge of the cliff, but I also want color in there. When I did my scrub in, you know, I approximated colors as usual, and I felt like I had a nice value shift between the light and the dark, even though the color that I had scrubbed in for the shadows on the cliffs, it wasn't accurate. It was just sort of, I wasn't, you know, as I mentioned before, I'm not worried about getting a perfectly accurate color. It's almost more important that the value is on or close, because if I've got that established, then I can use that value as a gauge or a guide to, you know, how dark or light to mix my colors. So in other words, if I'm mixing, like, say, a warm color for the cliffs and I put it up there and it's too light compared to what I've already scrubbed in, then I know I need to darken it. So so having like a good value scrub in can be really useful. And so that was the case. I felt like there was a nice value structure going on. And then I started judging my colors from 15 or 20 feet back, because I did, as usual, I started mixing colors up close, and I would think it was warm enough, and I think, oh, I'm getting some sort of glow here. And then I'd walk back and it was just gray and dull. So I really had to push that the warmth for it to read properly from a distance. So again, it's just, you know, I talk about this a lot, but it's a reminder to get back when you're mixing colors. And also then you're also checking on your composition to make sure that the composition is working as well, or just that the whole overall painting is working. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. And like I said, it really helps keep me making these videos. So if that sounds interesting, check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.